Thank you very much for joining us on the Modern Job Search Checklist. This is Mark Anthony Dyson, just covering Mark, of course. Thank you very much for joining us. We come to you every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central. We kind of like to have a little fun answering your questions and helping you with the job search. So, this is all about you. In the meantime, we try to also give you enough information for you to make some informed decisions on your job search and the rest of your career. We got some great experts. Of course, with me is Damian Birkel. He is the founder of Professional Transition, and also he is a two-time author, and his organization has helped more than 10,000 folks since 1992. How you doing today, Damian?
I'm doing fine, and I want to also welcome our viewers. And what Mark said about your questions, absolutely. And even if you have questions that are not on the topic, if you have a burning issue, comment us, send us a comment, because we're here to meet your needs. We're here to serve you. So welcome, and we're going to have a great show today.
We absolutely are. And want to introduce Randy Wooden, who is joining us on our expert panel today. He's been working in the career space for many years now in workforce development. He works with the Goodwill Industries in Northwest North Carolina. So I definitely want to have him on the show. We're going to have his partner in crime, Teddy Burris, on next week, but we're going to enjoy Randy while he's here. How are you, sir?
I'm good, and if you need to know any dirt on Teddy,
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you right now. Let me just say that. So
We can't
take notes,
wait.
take notes, take notes.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you start to laugh hysterically, it's Randy's fault. It's not Damien ours. But in any case, we're trying to parse out you're going to take control of your career today. Hopefully, we'll get down to some very useful and practical strategies that you can apply as soon as you hang up from us or that you let us go. In the meantime, you can also watch replays here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. They're all happening simultaneously. Say hi to us, ask us questions, uh, give us answers, even. But this is a dialogue between you and us. But we're going to just kind of get it going here. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world of job search and careers, and we want to nail it, well, at least a few of the topics anyway. LinkedIn just published that there are more job postings for recruiters now than it did in 2019. In other words, it's becoming a recruiter's world as much as it is becoming a job seeker's market. So we all know and have experienced how recruiters can be very helpful. A lot of my friends are, and a lot of you guys' friends are recruiters. And not to forget the headhunters, but headhunters are really more of your friends than recruiters. But we don't want to say all of that just yet. But recruiters are very helpful, to understand a little bit of the role. Recruiters, you're more than likely going to find them to work for the company, but still, they're a great resource because you can see anyone rant at any particular point, especially on LinkedIn, about the hiring process, especially about what not to do. But what are some other useful ways that recruiters tend to be useful for job seekers, Randy?
Well, I mean, like anybody else, so much of the job hunt is networking, and lest we think that a recruiter is nothing but a robot keying stuff into a database, and you're just another faceless entity out there. I think you try to develop rapport and relationships with them. And I used to be a headhunter, he's a recruiter, and we go out, almost like an independent insurance agent. And our job is to go out and find that needle in a haystack, maybe the ones that aren't applying for work. And so that's a tough job. And so you tend to look to rely on what I call centers of influence, people who are perhaps not job hunters, but who know a lot of other people. And they like to kind of be, ear to the ground sort of thing. And so once you begin to develop those, it's almost like a sales process where word of mouth and testimonials and referrals are huge. So to the degree that you can plug into that network and perhaps offer to help recruiters, even if they can't help you today, I think that helps build some goodwill, pun intended. But I do think it allows you to get on their radar, and so you kind of become front of mind as somebody they're going to reach out to when they have a need.
Mhm.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, whether you meant to or not, using the goodwill, but being online and engaging relationships and engaging recruiters, even though you may not directly work them, goodwill is sort of that social capital that we all want to try to bring to any part of the social, especially on LinkedIn. You agree, Damien?
Absolutely. And, LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to find, in many cases, who that person is within a company. And just like Randy said, become a center of influence by, and I know we're not talking about LinkedIn, but by building a LinkedIn profile
Hmm.
and a community that supports your profile in such a way that you will become a center for influence. And the more people, quote unquote, in the business that you bring into your LinkedIn community, the better, because you do have things to offer recruiters, whether you are out of work or not. And the more people understand that you want to help them, and here's the critical part, no strings attached, the faster your reputation is going to grow and the more effective your job search is going to be. Now, if you're one of the folks that we've talked about, Mark and I, the great resignation that's going on, where people are just resigning and we're trying to find a job, or resign after finding a job, which is most preferable. Those as a result of that, um, their goodwill goes in front of them, and people will call them. And many times when I was called by recruiters, when I was not actively job searching, a passive job searcher, I guess is what you call it.
Hmm.
At the very end, they would say to me, "Well, who do you know?" And if you get a reputation in the industry as being someone that provides, top grade referrals, they will remember you. And LinkedIn is a fabulous way to be able to stay in touch without having to bug them on the phone or what have you. And again, to build goodwill targeted within your LinkedIn community.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really builds your job search is relationships, and really, even if you don't ever personally get recruited by a recruiter, their information that they share on LinkedIn is gold, because they are
Mhm.
giving you insights on many times what not to do, but also what to do, and sometimes that is what you'll need to catapult your results further. Teddy, any more thoughts? I
Well,
mean, Randy. Oh, I keep
I got to get a
Randy.
teddy
Let
map
me
here.
explain. Randy's on a show with a guy named Teddy, and
Yeah.
I look at both of them. In my mind, they kind of translate the same. But Randy, I
No,
apologize.
and honestly, I forgot the question, but I'll tell you something that does come up a lot. And we talked about earlier, leaving a job without a job, and that is this great resignation or the turnover tsunami or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of shuffling of deck chairs right now, and coming and
Mhm.
going and such. And so I've been asked frequently about that, as far as, hey, should I quit my job and without another job? And what are the pros and cons of that? And I think that's a timely question, and I'd like to tap into that at some point today. But doubling back to the whole thing with the recruiters and such, recruiters are middlemen in the process, and a
Mhm.
lot of times we don't hear back from them because they don't have word from the hiring official. most of the ones I know, and I guess I'll speak for both of you guys, most of them are their heart's in the right place. They're trying to do the best they can, but they're swamped. And to
Hmm.
your point, Mark, you mentioned that article from LinkedIn that there's a dearth of recruiter. There's so many openings out there, but there's not enough experienced recruiters to fill them.
Hmm.
Uh, and so they're most of these guys care, but they're swamped and they can't always get back to you when you would like to hear from them. So just know they're trying to do the best they can. It's nothing personal, but you do want to, without being a pest, you do want to try to keep front of mind. And again, whether that's on the front end, to Damien's point about being the center of influence, or even during the hiring process itself, just understand and be patient that they may have other things going on and just don't have an answer for you at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. But the job search is a game where whoever masters the game of follow up actually wins, right, Damien? I mean, what we're talking about here is that really, as a job seeker, you have to be ready to be the one that will do the following up for the most part. Even if the recruiter fails to follow up, you've got to be quicker instead of waiting or complaining, which often doesn't help. It's just more productive to go ahead and to make that extra call.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned this before, but you are responsible for your career. There's nobody that's going to do it for you. If you're
Mhm.
out of work, and I know the first couple times I kept waiting for a job savior to swoop in and have a job for me. And when it comes to recruiters and communication, first thing is remember a recruiter works for a company. They don't work for you. Their job is to find someone who matches the criterion for the position that they've been given. You can be the nicest person in the world, extremely talented, but if your abilities don't line up with a position that you want, it's probably not going to happen. And as Randy said, um, it's nothing personal. It's just the way that the game is played. And coming back to what Mark said, yes, you do have to take charge and you do have to communicate not only with recruiters, but with any other people that you are involved in your job search. Because if you don't take the reins, so to speak, just as you were saying before, Randy, they're very very busy people, and you're not doing yourself a favor if you don't take control and be proactive, but not a pest.
Let me tag on to that a little bit. There's I'm the king of analogies, so I should have been a stand-up comedian, but one of the things I talk about a lot is ask for the job and keep control. Ask for the job and keep control. And I don't mean literally, could I have this job? But as the interview winds down, you want to make sure that they understand clearly that you want the job.
Mhm.
So restate what you think they're looking for, restate your interest in the position. But the keep control part is pretty key. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients come to me and say, Randy, listen, I interviewed 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. What do I do? I don't want to bug them. So that whole thing. So that ask for the job, the keep control part, as the interview winds down, hopefully Damien will tell me what the next step is and when.
Mhm.
Hopefully, if he's a good interviewer, he owes it to me. That's just common courtesy. Not everybody will do that. And so if I don't hear what that next step is and when, then I'm going to ask for that. What do you see as the next step? And when do you see that happening? And he may say, hey, look, today's Friday. We should know something by the end of next week as far as setting up next round of interviews, let's say.
Mhm.
So I said, well, great. So, and I'm thinking, I look at my watch or I look at my whatever, and I try to figure out what date of the month that is. I have no idea. I don't even know what year it is anymore. It seems like it's flown by. But what I do is
Yeah, I
I say,
think
well, great.
we all got time fatigue.
But I say, well, great. I'm excited. I know you have other people you're speaking with. If I haven't heard from you by next Friday, could I get back in touch with you?
Mhm. Good.
That's what I mean by keep control, because now when you do have not heard anything and you do call back, you can say, I was speaking with Damian. He suggested I reach out to him today as a follow-up to my interview from August or whatever the first day was that you talked to him. So there's that. Now, there's also the whole topic of thank you notes and such, and we can certainly dive into that. But in terms of that follow-up, when I haven't heard back, I think that's a useful step to take at the end of the interview. Ask for the job and keep control.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely it's something really kind of old school, isn't it? In the fact that you're asking for the job. But I think one of the things that often people can ask better questions, even not just asking for the job. There's a lot of ways to ask for the job, and one of the things I thought of is one of my favorite questions is to ask, okay, is there anything that I'm missing that you need that you didn't hear in this interview?
Mhm.
And that's real. And you may not have asked that specific question, but what you want to kind of discern is that okay? Did I, what is it that you didn't hear that you need to hear, so to speak? And that's an opportunity if they're forthcoming about it. Uh, they'll say most of the time. Now, sometimes people will have a different way of responding. I know that I've had older clients when I was doing client work who asked that question. One got a response of, "Oh, well, we're concerned and questioning whether we think you can keep up with the job." Now, of course, the person that asked the question, the person responded was to an older person, and as always, the fact that that boy, can we keep up? But I think all of that to say is to kind of ask questions that will help you discern and give you a chance while you're there, and then also that you can understand what the rules of engagement by what you were saying, Teddy, as far as when's a good time to follow up when I didn't hear from you. Damien, you want to add to that?
I do, and this is something that I've developed relatively recently, and that's because the hiring process is taking even longer than it was before. Because especially with Delta, whatever the latest version of COVID is, companies are
Hmm.
now relooking at not bringing everybody back. And the reason why there is the delay is because now you have a workforce that's splintered, and trying to get decision makers together in
Right.
one meeting is much more difficult. So here's what I recommend. Go ahead and we'll talk about thank you notes, but this is what I'm trying to get to. After you
Right.
send the thank you note, and if there is a long delay, send them a note and say something like, I really enjoyed our opportunity to interview for the blank position on this particular day. We talked about many things, and I'd like to take a minute to once again demonstrate how my abilities match your needs. And then you take the time to list the company requirements and list your abilities so that they match up, so that they can clearly see how you match what they need. Because interviewing is a fluid process. And what I mean by that is, as different people interview, many times the position morphs a little bit each time a new person comes in with the core requirements and additional talents. And so taking the time to remind them of you, regardless of what order you were in when you interviewed, is very, very important,
Hmm.
because the hiring process is taking so long. So we'll talk more about this later, but hopefully, Mark, I addressed what you asked me.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you did, and I would want to just recognize a few of the people who are listening with us today. Of course, Annette joins us every week. Thank you, Annette, for joining us, and also was a past guest on the show. Julie Ann, thank you very much for joining us. Debria, and Julianne has a couple of comments I want to bring on. And one of the things I think we often get caught up in is blanket answers that we think that will cover all. And of course, I want people to take away the things that are useful to them, as opposed to just trying to give them a standard byline that they can hear from any career professional. But I think this comment that Julianne says interviews are taking long, believe because there's not a standard interview procedure. Um, I don't know about that because it's like, what were we doing before? But having said that, we've talked about how in the past, especially last week, my friend Jack Kelly, who co-hosts with me on Wednesday's show, Job Seeker Nation, 1 p.m. Eastern, we he talked about a client that took 14 interviews. Now they got the job, but I've heard from people where they did 10 interviews and didn't get the job. I mean, how frustrating is that? But I don't know if there. I don't know if I could agree that there's not a standard because interviews is not something that's overlooked by any body. But however, it was reasonable to expect to have 3 or 4 interviews for most companies, unless they've said so, and then they'll make a decision. But yeah, I think that to Julianne's point, though, Randy, that that people are keep changing the rules as things happen, and for some reason, there's no rhyme or reason why they do it. There's no reason for people to have 14 interviews.
No,
Uh,
it
Go
shows
ahead.
the inefficiency on the part of a company. I mean, and quite frankly, is that a company you want to work for? If they can't get it figured out at some point, I think we've all, whether job hunters, worker bees, big shots, whatever, we've all had to adapt and adopt to changes. And there's with all this great turnover, and as we pointed out at the outset of the show today, there are a lot of recruiter positions that are out there that are open. So yeah, you got to cobble together what you can, and our goodwill is no different from a lot of other companies. And we're in a struggle to identify good, talented workers. And so I think it's an excellent point to bring out about the duration of the hiring period, because when I was a headhunter, if we had a good candidate, they're a perishable product, and they're not going to be on the market very long if they're good. And in
Mhm.
this economy, if you're good, you're not going to be on the market for long if you have what companies want. So if I'm an employer, I'm competing for them, just like job hunters are competing for that position. So we've got to get our act together. If you're an employer, get your act together, uh, make it happen. And if you're short staffed, you got to do what you got to do, but don't drag it out to 10 interviews, 5 interviews. Even 5 is a lot. I mean, unless you're really at a
Right.
high level where you've got to sit before a board and you've got to do a number of other hoops and hurdles to jump through. But yeah, it can get frustrating. And Damien, I don't know about your experience. I can't recall ever having more than about 3 interviews, maybe 4. But no, if you get in those 5, 10 interviews, man, that's a marathon. Wow, that's
Yeah,
tough.
and this was even, and I've
Yeah,
heard from people who even were interviewing for executive like
Mhm.
positions.
Mhm.
yeah,
And I'm going like, executive to me would be somebody who is much easier scrutinized, and much easier because there's more data because they have a length of career, and but they're also more likely to be visible uh, to the public or in the industry than any other. Uh, so I really don't know what in the world could be any different than this than before
yeah.
COVID ever happened. Other than when the economy changes, so does the rules of engagement, and so does gamesmanship, so to speak, between employers and the job seekers. Damien.
Yeah, this is an absolutely true story pre-COVID about a human relations manager that got laid off. And we were on this very topic. And what she said is it depends on the metrics of the company many times.
Mhm.
She had 90 days to find a candidate for their very first interview. So they weren't even considered late until the 90th day. Their average hire time was any time anywhere between 6 and 9 months. And
Mhm.
as a company, they were delighted with that. And that was her metric. And that's what she met, period. Unless, someone way upstairs said, no, we need to find this position immediately. So my point in this whole thing is it is so easy to take it personally that you were the problem. They're not calling you back because of something you said or you did, when in many cases, there is nothing more you could have possibly done to get the job. And understanding and processing what Randy just
Mhm.
said about number of interviews and all of that others, it's brutal and it's exhausting. But sadly, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Do you guys?
Yeah, only when the competition aces me out all the time. And if I'm sitting here and I
Mhm.
can't make a decision, and I'm going to rant here for a second. Nobody wants to have the kahunas to step up and make a call, and everything is done by committee and by unanimous consent and all this stuff. And because everybody wants to cover their butt, and companies will eyeball that putt 15,000 different ways. And I tell people, in a job hunt and also from a hiring standpoint, you study it, you make the putt, you hit the putt.
Mm-hmm.
And indecision and a lack of a decision is in itself a decision. And when you start losing enough good talent because you can't get your act together, you're going to have to change what you're doing. Same thing if you're a job seeker and you get interviews. Well, okay, maybe the resume and the application is fine, but if you keep stubbing your toe in the interview and you keep losing the job, maybe you need to think about your interview process. And so companies are no different, but they may just stick to it because it's the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And until they feel enough pain, and I think there's a lot of pain out there now because companies are dying to find good talent. They really truly are. And it's very competitive. So anyway, my 2 cents. Off the
Well,
rant.
well, the aspect of having a good candidate
Yeah.
is really subjective. I mean, we can. I mean, there are plenty of people that there's a reason why they're going outside the company. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So when I hear people say that it's hard to find good talent, um, one is that you found good talent before this, and with 4 or 5 interviews. Uh, so really, a lot of that is not the problem, but the reason that you're taking longer when at the same time you're saying that I need to hire a bunch of people now is an anomaly, and people can smell it now. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, people are starting to call you bluff. And the great thing I love is if somebody who really has control is also the one that can easily walk away. And I had a
Yep.
manager who told me once, it says, you know who really wins the fight is the person that walks away. And at first I kind of thought about it in a physical sense, but then I thought about it, I'm going, no, no. There's several different layers to that, and one of the layers is that yes, if you keep blowing hot air and everybody can see it, then I think it's likely that I have the power to walk away. That gives me an advantage. It doesn't give me at a disadvantage because you know that you're going to do this from the time I start to the time that I leave. So why would I subject myself to that? And I think that people are just understand that it's a game now. Even though I would love to be able to go to restaurants and not wait as long as I do for a table because they're short, but that's a horse of another color. But I do want to continue this discussion in a different way. It says, we talked about how important recruiters are, but I think the communication, uh, people don't really get too deep when they connect with people who refer them and to get hired. Basically, when people get a referral, they kind of stop. But it does mean something if you start to connect with people who are kind of down like other employees, other hiring managers. The networking aspect is really a great skill. So, yeah, let's talk about thank you letters. And as LinkedIn did have an article regarding that, and there's been several articles regarding that. There's some people and there's some recruiters say, "Don't send me a thank you letter." I mean, for whatever reason, and but that's just some. Uh, so, but I think there's a right way and there's a wrong way to distribute or to send written correspondence. Your thoughts on this, Randy?
You can control your time and your attitude.
Yeah.
You can control your time and your attitude.
Mhm.
It's a competitive environment. You're not the only game in town. You're not the only qualified applicant. What is within your control, within your time, that you can do to help further your cause? And I would
Mhm.
argue it's a thank you note. I mean,
Mhm.
there are other things too, certainly, I mean, from as basic as showing up on time and dressing appropriately and all of those things. But a thank you note is key, and not just an email thank you. That's the quick response, especially if it's a job where they're going to make a decision in the next day or two.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If you send a snail mail, US mail, old fashioned, that is amazingly great. It is fantastic. Now, granted, through Zoom and other platforms, you may not the, the person that's interviewing you may not even report to the office, so they may
Right.
never get that thank you. And I get that. I get that.
Mhm.
But what it does do is it's another touch. It's another opportunity for you to share something that piqued your interest during the interview, maybe something you needed to clarify. Maybe so, how you get in a car or you hang up from the call and you go, man, I can't believe I forgot that.
Mhm.
Here's an opportunity for you to go back and make things right.
Mhm.
And I would argue that you should do that for each of the individuals that you spoke with. So it doesn't need to be a one size fits all template
Absolutely.
kind of thing. And don't go the obligatory, thank you, had a great opportunity to talk to you, excited about the position, and I hope to hear from you. Even that's better than nothing. It's a placeholder.
Right.
But if on
Right.
the other hand, I could say, you know, I I really like that hat. We talked about where you bought that. I've been to that city, Mark, where you bought that. Just something that piqued my interest or something from the interview that says I was paying attention.
Mhm.
I think it's valuable, and Damien, I think you'd agree too. I mean, a little touch of that old school can go a long way when you're trying to differentiate.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
Damien.
another thing that you can do is read who's going to interview you,
yeah,
their LinkedIn profile, and read it all the way. Go all the way down. Find out what college they graduated with. Find out what causes they believe in, if they list it, and then work that into the interview. That's stage one. And then stage two, when you are writing the thank you note, whatever that hot button that you may have hit that's not job related is another
mhm,
thing that you can bring in to show, as Randy said, that you are listening, but more importantly, is to show that you have connected. Because if you can make that connection with the hiring manager, the human resource manager, that is a gateway to showing them that you will play well in the sandbox, because the number one issue and concern that they have is, will you fit in our culture? And if you do not make that connection, then you'll end up 9 times out of 10 not getting the job, and someone that's less qualified that they deem more likely to gel with the culture will get the job. And that explains why idiots get promoted.
Damien, I thought you were going to leave me out of this. I can't believe you, Mark.
Let
You
me
gotta talk to this guy. I can't
right,
believe.
yeah, I'll talk to him after the show. But
Thank you.
let me give you give you an example.
Yeah.
I just thought about this. This is from me a few years back. I had two clients, and while I was on vacation, both of them called me almost within the hour when I was in a department store. My sons were young at that particular time. They weren't even, they were the preteen age, but they both called me. They were both in the same place in the interview. They both finished with their final interviews. One client was here in Chicago, um, and I referred her to someone. So this was a referral. So she was halfway in, even to begin with. And she had finished her set of interviews, but she hadn't heard anything in 3 weeks. Another client hadn't heard anything in about 3 weeks, and she was in Honolulu, Hawaii. So, and just had a baby. Gave both of them the same advice. Did you send a thank you note? If you
Hmm.
haven't, see if you could present it in person. If you
Ooh,
can't present it in person, try to leave it at the front desk in some kind of way, or some. But you waited a little while. And it may take another week for them to get it. They might have made a decision. Since you haven't got a call, at least you can force a no out of them, in the sense, compel a no out of them, in the sense that you gave a thank you note, and they're going to be compelled to say something more than likely. So both of them did it, but one kind of just sent a little, I think it was like an email. So she didn't do exactly what I suggested, but she responded. The other one took her baby, went downtown to the office, Honolulu, and brought to the office a thank you note, and got a chance to have further discussion with the people involved.
Hmm.
Now, they didn't have a position because they hired for them, but because she went out of her way, they created a long contract position that eventually turned into a full time job.
good for
All
her.
because
Yeah.
she went the extra 2 miles. And, going downtown anywhere in any big
Mm.
city is a hot mess, much less bringing a baby. But all that to say is that she was more memorable. The other person, Chicago, didn't get hired,
Mm,
Yeah.
and she
And
did.
and one of the things too, and I think one of the this goes back to the guys that sit there at the computer all day long and apply for jobs. And I think, man, I just rocked it. I applied for 8 jobs today. And it's the fear of rejection. If you have to actually pick up the phone, or you're actually going to go face to face or walk into a building, you face rejection.
Hmm.
Somebody telling you, no, we can't use you, which is death if you're a salesperson, because you're going to hear no a heck of a lot.
Right.
mhm,
So, kudos to that person who had the guts to face that potential rejection. And ultimately, initially, it was, oh no, you did hire somebody, but
mhm,
because of their persistence without being a pest, they were able to ultimately land something that maybe they probably, well, they wouldn't have otherwise been able to land. So, hats off to her. It's an
Yeah.
excellent move. Good stuff there. Really.
Yeah. But it goes back
Mhm.
to the old school. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can do it in person, these days it's better to have that, to make some time close by.
Hmm.
Go to the Starbucks, Panera, whatever's next door, do the handwritten note, and leave it at the front desk so they'll get a chance to get it, as opposed to doing any kind of mail, unless you want to spend the money for UPS to make sure that that person gets it. But yeah, just to kind of send the emails okay, and I think it is acceptable in the sense that people are much more, they're interviewing for our part. I mean, there's nothing you do if you're in Chicago and you're interviewing for a position where the home office is in France. And that's what's happening more often these days than it's ever
mhm,
had before. Is that
Hmm.
now there's not that is not that much difference between interviewing for overseas position than you are one that's within your city.
mhm,
So yeah, you got to get a little creative, but you can say memorable things within that note.
mhm,
Talking about what you talked about during the discussion, um, adding some additional insight, and taking some opportunities to show that you're a good fit for the position, is best on based on the information that you have about that. Uh,
mhm.
Damien, I know you have other strategies to add to that.
Thank you. First thing is, if you're going to hand deliver something, truly, I'm thinking about where I used to work, where there was a fishbowl where you walked in and you were in a glassed in uh, uh, lobby. I mean, small, and you looked at the guard, and if he thought you looked good, you he'd buzz you in, and then he was all glassed in, and you slid it under to him. And
Hmm.
if you do that, then another thing that I would do is I would go back and email the manager or whoever it is, and just let them know that I dropped something off at the front desk for you, only because in some places, in some employers, there's high security, and if you don't ask for a package that you know is coming, they may never get it because it may be deemed as a security risk. So just keep that in mind. Another thing is never, ever, ever underestimate the power of thank you. Um, Randy knows Fran Griffin, I believe, who's a recruiter at one of our hospitals here in town. And when she gave a presentation at Professionals in Transition, as Randy has, as Teddy has, uh, I happened to ask her in 27 years, how many thank you notes have you received? Now, this is a person who has recruited thousands of people because she handled the non executive placements, thousands of people, 27 years. She received 10 thank you notes in all that time. And all 10 of those people went to work because for her, because not only did they interview well, but they made a great impression. So never, ever, ever underestimate. And finally, uh, I would not be here in North Carolina. You guys have both heard this, but I went from pots and pans because I was a cookware buyer to mops, brooms, and brushes because I got recruited to come down here. 3 years later, the company was sold and I was out of work again. And I ended up going back into the corporation in bras and panties. But it's the way that I got there that's most interesting. I was a loaned executive for the corporation. They were trying to bridge me till something opened up. And it was one person that I never met, that I never knew, who heard my presentation, who stopped the hiring process and forced me into it. And his boss said to me, "You have been punished enough." So, my point is do your thank you note, connect with people when you're there, be personal in terms of sharing LinkedIn tidbits that you can pick up and keep going. It seems like we've
Yeah.
lost Mark.
I'm here. I know I was
Okay.
just I was drinking water and then I muted myself. But yeah, I don't know how many more times I, I enjoy hearing you say bras and panties, but that's a whole every time it hits differently. But we do have a
Yeah.
question. We have a question from Tina. She asked, "How often should you send emails to your interviewer where the next steps of your job or next steps of the job is either not moving forward or slow to move forward? How often should you send emails to your interviewer when the next step of the job is not either not moving forward or slow to move forward?" That's a great question. And I do have a response to that because I've been saying lately, as long as companies are kind of taking their time, 3 to 6 months, and they're, putting you through 8, 10, 14, whatever that number is, you have a right to go and get other interviews
Absolutely.
and to have other interviews on top of interviews, and therefore it could possibly be a full-time job just interviewing for other companies. It's better than clicking apply today,
Mhm.
uh, all in all. But yes, I really think that you shouldn't wait on never ever 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 wait on one company's answer. If one company's taking their time, you go to the next one. In fact, you shouldn't wait at all. As soon as you get through with one company and they're taking more than a day, go to the next company
Mhm.
and or start the process over. But I think there's other thing you could do too is that you could also network deeper within the company. Let's say you got a referral and you got the interviews, try to see if you can get introduced from your referral to other people in that company, because there might be another discussion that you might need to have with somebody in that company, another interview. Even if they said, this is kind of the last person, sometimes they will say, well, there's always this one more person we want you to meet. And it could be exhausting. So the other thing you could do too is network deeper in that. Randy, your view on
Well,
this?
we already talked about ask for the job and keep control. So you already
Right.
know what they've set out as a timeline. So
Hmm.
certainly you send a thank you email and a snail mail email. So we've covered that. Then it gets into, being a stalker and a pest versus persistent, and where do you draw the line and such. I'll tell you what, you may want to rotate between an email and a voicemail
Good.
for one. That's one thing, right?
Hmm.
So you send
Okay.
the email thank you, and then they say, okay, we'll know something within a week. All right. So the week goes by, then you follow up with a phone call. And again, because they had suggested that you reach out to them. And let's assume you don't hear anything. You leave a voicemail. Because if they
Hmm.
say something, then obviously then that's going to change what happens next. Because they'll say, hey, listen, so and so's on vacation, or you'll get some kind of intel that says here's where the holdup has occurred. But then if you don't hear anything, now again, maybe you do another email. But here's the thing. You don't just say, hey, I haven't heard from you. What's going on? You don't want it to come across like that. What you might want to do is cite something that you read about their company, something of
Good.
Hmm.
interest,
Mhm.
something new that said, hey, I read this and I thought of you and I wanted to share it with you. You probably have heard, or maybe you're aware of this, but blah, 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 blah. And
Hmm.
again, just restate your interest. And here's the key. You can say, and I understand that timelines can get pushed aside due to a lot of reasons. I certainly understand that. Just know that I'm still very interested in the position and look forward to hearing from you.
Good.
Right.
Good.
And so, I mean, there are a lot of ways you can pretty that up and
Sure.
play with the words and all that. But basically, you're not going, hey, you're an idiot. I haven't heard from you. What's going on with you guys? Get your act together. Give them
Yeah.
something. Give them something. Same thing when you reach out to network. If all I ever do is call people, hey, Damian, man, I lost my job. Can you help me out? Can you help me out? And the only time you ever hear from old Baldy over here is when I need your help. At some point, at some point, you're going to look at caller ID and go, dude, not today. I'm not,
No.
Yeah.
I'm not up to it. And so offer something initially, something you saw that piqued your interest, and let them know.
Good.
And then at the tail end, just restate your interest and be understanding that things may have come into play that pushes the timeline out. Understand that. I hope to hear from you. And you know what? If you go through that and they don't respond to you, you let it ride, and then maybe you do one last, in a few weeks later, and but again, to both you guys' point, you're 100% right. Until that bird in the hand is a big deal.
Yeah.
And until you have that, you have nothing. All you have is interviews, and you're not the only game in town. They're
Right.
interviewing other people, and those people are interviewing with other companies. And so the work's not done until the paperwork's signed. And ultimately, that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Damien?
One thing that I have used with some of the members of professionals in transition is if the person, the candidate, had a strong referral in, and this you've gone through, what Randy has talked about, which by the way is excellent. Touch them
Hmm.
through the process in as many different ways as possible. But I've also circled around to the person that referred me in and have said, "Hey, could you do me a favor? I know things can change, but do you think you could make a call for me and just get a feel for what's going on?" And sometimes that's worked like a charm. Um,
Hmm.
Other times it's backfired. There was a time when I wrote a recommendation on LinkedIn for a candidate and sent it to his potential hiring manager at this company he had interviewed and hadn't heard from in 3-4 weeks. And the manager accepted my invitation to LinkedIn. That was in the morning, but in the afternoon, the person that I said was so good got the rejection letter from human resources. So it actually took somebody else to kind of say, hi, hello, this guy's great, to motivate the human resource manager to act, even though he had hired somebody 3 weeks earlier. If we hadn't done something like that, he'd still be waiting.
Yeah, yep. And all of that is such great advice. I use something that, and I think I told you this, Damien, before. My friend Don Levy, who had been a Fortune 500 executive for 25 years and has been in HR and been different types of leadership positions within the C-suite. Uh, he uses, and I use this, and this works even to this day for the last 5 6 years, is for people to send like a list of 20 or 25 ways that they could be of value to the company, just to kind of tip the scales a little bit. And I think that's one of the things that people forget uh, in waiting, is that they forget while you're waiting and there's no communication, people slowly forget because they're concentrating, they're starting to, the employer's starting to concentrate and hone in on specific candidates, and if you're not one of them, you'll get forgotten. But if you keep reminding them every now and then, whatever that timeline you establish with the hiring manager or whoever it is, that you're going to also put some memorable nuggets as to why you would be a good fit. Now, there's always, again, like I said, the best remedy for waiting is to not to wait and interview with other folks,
Mhm.
and that almost never fails, because then what if you get two offers while you're waiting for the other? That kind of sends you a message. Well, the two got their act together and one doesn't. Why would you go with the one, and why wait for the one that doesn't have their act together? So I think all those kind of decisions, people just don't think it that way because they're just waiting for that one. And really, these days you can't afford to wait for one, because time wouldn't be on your side at that particular time. Time is only on your side as you begin to show people you can add value to them. Julianne had just made a comment. She says, personal thank you notes have always been in my glove box since college. My wife and I keep them kind of close by because we use them as people have helped us, or for other reasons outside of job search. But yeah, they're good things to always have a box where you can keep a hold of a physical one, so you can get the help. Tina says that she says, awesome answers, gentlemen. Thanks.
Hey,
So we're
Mark, let me
very
throw
happy
something in there.
to.
Can I throw
Sure.
something
Go
in
ahead,
about thank
Randy.
you notes? We talk about how important it is to, and I want to clarify something here.
Sure.
Especially what prompted this was the glove box comment. By the way, glove box, that alone is old school. Think about how many people wear
Yeah, I
gloves
know,
now,
right?
but the
And just
white
think, I
gloves.
didn't even say, hey, I haven't seen that in a while.
But eh, eh, um, here's the thing, and I see this. I give people credit for trying, but I think it's inappropriate, and it's this: they have a pre-written out or a pre-typed out thank you, that generic. It was a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure, pleasure. Excited about the position. Look to hear from you. And on the way out of their interview, as they're going through the lobby, they put it on the desk of the receptionist. It was a prepackaged. It's like getting a form letter in the mail,
Sure, sure it
and
is.
it sucks. It
Yeah.
it almost hurts you because on the one hand, yeah, it's nice that you did it, but you did it before the interview.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you, if nothing else, you leave and if perhaps come back the next day, or you don't make it all in one stop where you drop it off at the front desk, because unless you've gone out maybe to your car and you have something in that letter that speaks to the interview itself. Like I said, Mark, love the hat, that kind of thing. Hey, we talked,
Mhm.
or something about the interview that says, okay, this is real time. I did it now versus I did it the night before and I walked in with it. So,
Yeah. Yep. I completely agree. And that's my early example is like, yeah, go next door and write it.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
to Panera, go to whatever it is, go write it. People could smell that out. And let me give you an example of that. I've got a good story on this one. Somebody I know that actually they interviewed with this person. My friend was the person, was one of the was on the panel, and this person sent a thank you voicemail, which I thought was okay. And this was about 10 years ago. Uh, they sent the voice thank you. And and this person was gushing. I really like this person, and and they let me hear it, and I said, notice that the person didn't say your name.
Ah, yeah.
And she went and called everybody that was on that parent panel. Everybody got the same message without their name being mentioned. And boy, did that get that person disqualified really, really quick. But all that to say is that people need to be a lot more thoughtful in
Yeah.
the way it is. And definitely Julianne agrees. She says no, needs to be personalized with handwritten ink. Yeah, for the most part, that really helps make it personal. But I think as long as it's a personal, authentic transaction, that works pretty well. But the handwritten definitely stands out because nobody else does it these
Yeah.
days.
When was the
So
last
there
time you
you
got a handwritten letter in the mail?
right.
Yeah.
Think about that. You
It's
know, my
been
grandmother, maybe.
it's been a long time,
My
uh,
mom,
but most of us have cut our losses for in that
yeah.
regard. So so we did. So we covered everything we were supposed to cover, including the thank you letter, and kind of merged into different topics. So that kind of worked out very nicely. So you guys, what's going on with you, Randy? When is your next show coming up?
Well, we do a show every Wednesday. Hey, if we have a couple minutes, I would like to tackle that topic of should I quit a job without a job? Because
Good.
that's something that it won't take but just a minute or two, and I'd like to get your feedback. Do we have a couple minutes still, or we good?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, because it comes up. Uh, what are the pros and cons? Should I quit a job? I really don't like it. Should I quit it? And what do I need to be looking out for? And so there are really two, if you will, advantages of quitting a job without a job. And I would discourage someone from doing it, but
Mhm.
everybody is different. The main one is your health. We've worked at companies where the stress level is through the roof, whether it's corporate culture, whether it's just simply too much work, it's a bad boss, it could be anything. But if you're not sleeping at night, you have tightness in your chest, your blood pressure's through the roof, the doc says, you need to make a change, your health is more important than anything else. The other one is if you don't have a job, you have more time to look. So there's
Right,
that.
right.
Uh, and also in this economy, you'd like to think there are more opportunities out there, and so that may be a third one. But there's some downsides that you've got to look at, and certainly one of those deals with okay, fine, I've left my job. Do I have enough money in case I don't land something right away? And also, do I have the support of my loved ones throughout this process? It's almost like starting a business.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
you've
is.
got to have the cash behind you to survive those ramp up times, and
Mhm.
otherwise, all you're doing is trading one level of stress for another. Now I'm
Mhm.
stressing about money. And also now if you walk away from a job, when you get into the interview, the employer is going to say, "So why'd you leave?" And you're going to have to fidget around why you walked away from a job without another job. And we all know not to say bad things about employers and all that, but yet how do you pretty that up? So that's a topic for another. Maybe you can get Teddy on that one for next week. But you
Well,
also
we
face
definitely.
you
I
face
think
a
that's
couple other
something.
things too.
Yeah,
Yep.
we could probably tackle that question every week, just about, because people are always wondering what they should do. The
Yeah.
thing that I think that job seekers often do is that
Yeah.
they do onesies. They apply once, or they apply a few, and then they'll wait to think that there'll be this
Yeah.
one opportunity which will be golden, which many times it turns out not to be.
Mhm.
When really, the more you can't let the wheel go when you're driving. That's just, it's not possible. It's the same way with your job search. You can't take your hands off the wheel.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's true.
so,
Yeah.
so as you have it. So, Randy, anything that we should know that you got coming up next that you want the people to follow or see?
Well, what I can do is I can forward it to you, but I write a column every other Sunday in our local
Mhm.
Winston-Salem Journal, and it'll appear this coming Sunday, and it actually tackles maybe that question about quitting a job without a job. I
Hmm.
forget. I'm in the process of a 4-part series, and again, I don't even know what year it is. So for like, what are you doing next? I don't know. Let me
2021.
wait. I'll wait till it shows up, and then I'll show it to you. But no, every Wednesday we do it, and we do that talk show, and I host a couple LinkedIn workshops every week and such. So,
Hmm.
we're out here trying to help professionals in a job hunt. And find me on LinkedIn. It's Randy Wooden with a D. And reach out to me. We're happy to chat with you again. It's all free, but all three of us, we're in the same sandbox. We're all trying to help folks. And I hope today, by listening to some of this, that maybe it sparks a thought or two that you hadn't considered, or maybe it helps solidify what you thought might be right. And
Yeah,
here again, we're all here trying to help. So thanks again, Mark. Thank you, Damian, for having me on. I appreciate it. You
sure.
guys have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, Damien, what you got going on?
I just was quoted in Upjourney,
Okay, cool.
and it's a very interesting article. It's in my LinkedIn profile, and then I'm in the process of writing an article which I can share with you next week when I'm a little bit farther along. So, we're
Cool.
moving. And of course, folks can join us any Thursday night for Professionals in Transition via Zoom, and jobsearching.org is our website, or, look me up on LinkedIn. Be glad to help you. And Mark, Randy, excellent show as always. Thanks, and have a great weekend.
Yes. I just wrote on the voiceofjobseekers.com, redefining the rules of resilience to your career. I think
Good.
it's pretty useful. I would love to
Mhm.
get some feedback on it. Tell me what you guys think who are watching us today. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We always stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And should you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can contact us individually. We're back here next Friday with Randy's partner, Teddy Burris. We definitely want you to get it. And I'm sorry we didn't have a show last week. I had something personal I had to pivot to really quick. And luckily, it was just a very quick pivot. But life happens sometimes. So we're definitely going to bring it
Yeah.
next Wednesday, which I haven't announced. I'm having a special show on my timeline where I'll be streaming to all the platforms. We're having Scott Beeson, who just wrote the book bringing your whole self to work, and
Oh,
you
nice.
might be seeing him for the rest of the summer all over the media and stuff, which he usually does when he releases a book. Then Jack Kelly's going to join me for a half-hour discussion about the future of work, and this is next Wednesday. And then Beverly Jones, who hosts a NPR podcast, Jazz About Work. I've been on the show about 3 times, and she's going to be on my show talk about her latest book as well, about bringing happiness to work. So be sure you join me next Wednesday. I'll be putting that out there, I believe, this afternoon at some point. But lots of content coming your way. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. We'll see you next week, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We'll see you guys later.